What's up? My name is Osekre. I I'm a musician, curator, producer. I guess the mind behind Aputumpu, which is a Brooklyn-based blog that profiles. Currently, our goal is to profile rising bands in the scene, which has also expanded to include DJs and live acts that actually do electronic stuff. Um, I moved to Brooklyn a few years ago after graduating from Columbia University, and when I moved to Brooklyn, I realized there were a lot of different scenes, a lot of different neighborhoods. So, as an outsider, that seemed a bit confusing because I'm originally from Ghana. And so I figured I'd already made a transition to New York, and now I had to make a transition to Brooklyn. Um, that challenge also presented an opportunity, which was that I finally got the opportunity to become part of all these really different scenes that had very distinct characteristics and flavors. And I guess not really in a quest to belong, but in a quest to identify with what was going on, I kind of started going between all these different neighborhoods. So I hung out a lot in Williamsburg, saw shows at most of the all ages venues. Then I went to East Williamsburg, hung out a lot, saw shows, and then kind of moved further to Bushwick, the McKibben Lofts, and then the Tea Factory Lofts. So during this process, I also have my band, Osekre and the Lucky Bastards. That project had not even taken off yet. The cool thing for me was Brooklyn. I was in Crown Heights. And someone introduced me to the McKibben Lofts. At the time, the McKibben Lofts had the Monday night potion open mics, which was a unique open mic that happened in anyone's loft. So you actually didn't know where it was going to be next because someone often offered just because people didn't want to repeat it on back to back Mondays because of neighbors and noise and stuff like that. But at the Pushing Open Mic, there were two places, The Cloud and Good Friend Electric, which was run by this guy, Tyler. That was one of the places that most of the open mic shows happened. And all the bands in this building would congregate. Solo acts, bands, even poets, writers sometimes would congregate on Monday nights and have an amazing time playing music. And that was so awesome to me as a fresh guy in Brooklyn that was just trying to, identify with or was just building bonds and making friends and knowing that I had a place to go every Monday night where I could see all these awesome talents come together. The really interesting thing though was that most of the bands that played in the open mics at McKibben usually played just within that scene. So occasionally you would hear that some of the bands there were playing a show, say at 285 Kent or at Camille Gallery or Spike Hill, which is happening to most of the bands recently. But back in the day, Not Blood Paint, You Say USA, who were like the two main bands that everyone went nuts about, often played shows that I saw right there in McKibben. So the question that I asked myself was, why aren't these bands playing shows like the shows that I go to 285 Kent to see, or Deaf by Audio, or Cameo Gallery to see, or why are they not playing Shea Stadium? But then as you move around, you realize that each scene, each group of people are so well connected. Like you realize there is like the whole 285 Kent Silent Barn connection, Market Hotel connection. And you realize most of these people are people that hang out, but it's not just people that have been hanging out and have formed bands and support each other. They all interned, say for Show Paper back in the day, or they all worked at Silent Barn doing sound and lights and tech and stuff like that. So these are all relationships that have been building over the years and have been evolving. And so it dawned on me to try to do something because I saw bands in all these different scenes and I thought they were all great. So I figured, why not do something that actually brings the best, whatever that means, right? But the best or the most appreciated or the most engaging bands from each of these scenes to be part of a bigger party. And I thought I could do that because I was the outsider that could see things from that, I guess, bird's eye view. And so I decided to do Aputumpu Festival. The first time we did Aputumpu Festival was at the House of Yes and 285 Ken. Actually, let me backtrack. The first ever Aputumpu Festival was Aputumpu Tumpu Tumpu, and it was at the Silent Barn, the old Silent Barn, an all-day night festival. And that consisted of most of the bands from the Mickey Bean Lofts, whom I felt needed to get out of their, immediate scene to play elsewhere. And we brought a few bands from Jersey to play that show. Then the following year, we did the festival at the House of Yes and 285 Ken. And that was a huge leap for us because we brought all these different bands from so many different scenes coming into play. It's true, each band has each scene has its own characteristic. People have things that they do, like you find that most of the guys from the Mickey Bean scene often hanged out at Good Friend Electric recording. So they would be recording at Tyler's place, or they'll be hanging out at the Cloud, rehearsing for a show later that night or later that weekend. And you will find that everyone was pitching to everyone that was there to become part of each other's bands. So you find, one person, like my current bassist for Osekre and the Lucky Bastards, Michael Benham, played in about 2 different bands around the same time when he joined us. There were other drummers that played in 2 or 3 other bands. It was really a mutual, friendly, exciting atmosphere where people just shared their dreams and ambitions and hopes and desires and encouraged each other. I learned so much, my skills, my technique, my playing, which still has a long way to go, but improved significantly when I just hung with these guys and watched them and asked questions and did things. So that's pretty much kind of my point of view, and I guess what helped spark the whole Aputumpu blog, trying to curate or profile rising bands in the scene and ultimately trying to build a festival around that. And I think that is something we are going to do for as long as possible, because Aputumpu really is about bands from the scene, but bands from all these different little scenes in Brooklyn, playing with each other and complementing each other and supporting each other and really getting to meet each other and realize that, wow, we play different tunes, we have slightly different points of views on how we express ourselves on our instruments, but we can all come together and party and actually make something cool happen. It's a tricky thing to kind of brand or to say anything is like, I can tell you what I think Brooklyn music might be, but even that is still not, like, there is really no way of justifying what Brooklyn music is. And the reason why I'm saying this is because when you look at a schedule at Mercury Lounge or Pianos or the studio of Webster Hall, I guess Joe's Pub and Le Poisson Rouge are slightly different because of the way they book. But when you look at most of the bands that are playing these venues, every week you might find about 50% of the bands that play some of these venues actually being Brooklyn-based bands. And in my opinion, there really isn't a scene in Manhattan in the way that you can say there is a scene in kind of like the Bushwick and Williamsburg scenes. And even that keeps evolving. And the reason why I'm saying this is because based on what I have noticed going downtown to see shows, most of the bands that play venues downtown Manhattan are bands that came from elsewhere. The really unique thing, which I think in a way qualifies what the term scene can apply to in Brooklyn, is that most of these guys hang out with each other. And this is music that has developed as a result of them hanging out together and jamming together and writing together and going to open mics together and sharing stories together and going to see shows together. And so, that is kind of, what, like, the Tea Factory Lofts, when you talk about Next Level and Rock Bottom, when you go to most of the shows there, it's loud punk rock extra loud. Now, that is music that you also get to hear at Dev by Audio and Shea Stadium. But the sound that you hear from Tea Factory Lofts is still very unique because most of those guys also live in the buildings, and so they hang out together and do all the stuff that they do and then go ahead and play these shows. Whereas if you go to Shea, there are guys who hang out there because Shea is also like a daytime recording studio and stuff like that. But Shea has a huge element about it that includes really booking touring bands that have a lot of bars. And Shea does a really good job of mixing local bands that they think are somehow good to pair with most of the touring bands that they book. So, you know, I can't really label what a Manhattan scene looks like because I really don't think there is like a scene in Manhattan when it comes to like the kind of music that you hear per se. So yeah, in summary, there are distinct scenes in Brooklyn and people hang out, go to see shows, what they see, what they do when they go back, rehearse, live in lofts together, like 5-6 people start bands. It all wraps up each other, and it kind of shapes the sound that comes out of those scenes. And that pretty much is what is happening right now.